All right. So this is where it gets, I love talking about Bitcoin, obviously, and we've seen some really interesting stuff. So number one, we have to go back to Dubai. When I was with you in Dubai, we were talking about, would it break out? I was kind of against the breakout. It pierced the high a couple times, and then we saw it come right back in. And again, that's really important to understand. Here's your April high. And if you look at it, you got above it twice. There were two green candles right here and right here, and you failed each time. That was kind of a signal that big money was selling into the manic, kind of crazy small money that was just buying, buying, buying. Now we've come in significantly. Now this is going to be the killer here for Bitcoin. So in the near term, 1 to 3 week outlook, I see Bitcoin going up here, and you could even see it starting to move up. In fact, I am long Bitcoin right now with a target of 54,000, right? So right around 54,000, that's where I look to sell. My bigger concern on Bitcoin is what we're seeing in the longer chart. So if you go back to the kind of the early portion of 2021, there was this classic head and shoulders. In fact, back then, David, it was one of my big calls that got me a lot of notoriety when I made it on Kitco with you. And then when it broke, we went right to the target of 30,000. Here was the break point right there. What concerns me is that we're starting to create that same head and shoulder pattern over here. And is this the beginning of a right shoulder? And if that is, if you see, Bitcoin kind of stall out 54, 56,000 and curl over and break this neckline, the calculated target is down to about $17,000 on Bitcoin. Now, whether or not that hits in 2022, I don't know. All I can go by is if it breaks, then starting to look for that downside. But I will go on record saying in 2022, we will revisit 30,000 with a decent potential of at least getting to 20,000 in 2022.
Well, Gareth, some of the top comments in our previous Bitcoin interviews have been, hey, man, when are you going to stop spreading FUD?
Yeah, valid. But again, for everyone out there watching, I'm a chartist, right? So pattern, price, and time factors, cycles, all that kind of stuff, the charts, that's what I'm going by. And again, in all fairness, the calls have been right. I still remember people, laughing at me when we broke the April high briefly and saying, oh, we're going straight to 100,000, right? Plan B was calling for it. All these people were calling for it. And I said, honestly, I don't see it. And ultimately it came in. So it's mainly the charts that I follow, and the charts give me a probability, right? So it's 80%, 70% chance that I'm going to be right. Still means I'm going to be wrong sometimes. But again, I'd rather have those probabilities in my favor. Understand, I'm actually long Bitcoin right now. But again, I'm not looking for new all-time highs. I'm looking for a bounce here to about 54,000 before I exit and look for another dip.
Can you go back to that Bitcoin chart where you drew the head and shoulders again?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do that right now here. So, yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. Let me post those lines up again here.
Yeah, kind of looks like the last part is going like this. Who knows what's going to happen? That's
right,
and that's what your charts. That's what your lines are looking like. Who knows?
And that's what happens. The right shoulder is not fully formed yet, so it is just a potential pattern formation. But what you can't deny, and look at how freaky this is, right? So over here in the early portion of the year, you had the shoulder, and then you had kind of this M top right here, right? And then look at over here. It's identical. You have the same kind of weird M in the middle there. And again, you can't deny the kind of the comparison here, at least for now. So it's something that I have to keep on my radar as a technical trader and see if it does end up triggering.
Okay. One thing I will point out, and I think I've pointed this out to you before, is that in 2017, we had the double top and then it fell to new lows. We had a crypto winter for about 2 years or so. Mm-hmm. This time it didn't exactly do that because the second top was higher than the first top. Now in the previous two cycles, 2013 and 2017, the second top was lower than the first top. It does look like we're, obviously Bitcoin retraced to, I think what the low was $28,000 this year or something like that.
Yeah.
And it bounced back from there. It just looks like we're correcting and we're hitting new all-time highs. Like it's just, new highs are being breached every time a correction happens. So let me just offer a theory and let me know what you think. Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll retest the 30,000 at some point, a 30,000 mark at some point, but that's just going to bounce back up and breach a new high.
Yeah, so that's definitely a possibility. I mean, I think it's important, and I always like to say this when I'm on with you, is that if you ask me where Bitcoin is in 4 years from now or 5 years from now, I would say 250,000 or 500. So it's just this shorter term period where I see these deleveraging. And if I'm correct on the stock market, we know that the stock market does influence Bitcoin because of deleveraging, then that's part of my thesis for why it could dump out down to 20,000 or so. But yeah, you're right. I mean, the 30,000 level is going to be an epically big support level. And if it holds, then you're right. Then it could move up and it could very well do that. The only thing that kind of, there's some similarities to 2017. One is in 2017, when the Bitcoin market was hitting its high, the futures on Bitcoin were just launched. And that was the hype that drew it up to those all-time highs. Well, in October, what happened? The ETF was launched. So you have these kind of weird similarities with the tops. And then you also just have to think like, okay, let me take that into account. But I'll be the first to say that there's going to be an occasion where I'm wrong. Absolutely. And this could be one of them.
Okay. Well, let's keep tabs. Your track record has been pretty good so far. So no reason to suspect that maybe you'll be wrong in 2022. Now, Gareth, so Bitcoin overall this year to date, has done very well. We've had highs and lows, but overall, again, it's up 70%. Now, looking at the bigger picture, what do you think were the main drivers of this influx of capital into the cryptocurrency space last year and this year?
So Elon Musk, Jack Dorsey, MicroStrategies, I think those were huge. I mean, when you have influential people like that talking about it on social media, that's a huge driver. I also think the Fed has actually been one of the biggest drivers of interest in Bitcoin because of the money that they're printing and the inflation and the fear that, at some point the dollar will be worth less and less and less. You need a different asset. Now, again, the question is it gold or is it metals or is it Bitcoin? Obviously the younger generations are moving more towards digital currencies versus gold, but I'm a big believer you got to stay diversified. But I think, again, you have big players out there that are accumulating, that are big fans, and it's going to get notoriety. And I think, Twitter and other social media has been a huge driver of cryptocurrencies as well.
Okay. Circling back to gold, you earlier in the interview, you call for potentially $3,000. That's more than a 50% increase from today's levels, more than 50%, because we're not at $2,000 yet. Now that puts it in almost Bitcoin territory in terms of its performance. Let's assume that happens. Okay. My question is, what could possibly beat gold next year? What could possibly go up more than 50%?
So just to be clear, for my 2022 outlook, I think Bitcoin will be lower than it is currently by the end of next year. The stock market will be lower. I think gold will be higher. There's a chance that silver has a history of outperforming gold on a percentage basis. I do think silver could be that. The only concern I have is if the economy starts to slow down, the industrial side of silver may drag it down a little bit, but still silver has a great track record of outperforming gold. Uranium, there's always a chance that uranium, I think you have to start looking at uranium as a potential energy source if we're really going to move towards eliminating the climate change risk right now. So those are different ones, but I would really go with assets that are offsetting for the dollar. So if the dollar continues to get printed or inflation is high, I think those are ones. Now, I'll bring up one more point. I will say that I think Shanghai Composite, and I talked about this earlier in the year. I do think the Shanghai Composite will break out in 2022 from the short-term highs. And I do think that you will see China put the regulatory stuff behind them. And so stocks like Alibaba with their current levels, Baidu, Tencent, I do think that those will be places to go to outperform the overall stock market.